Welcome to the Mick, a Mook, and a Mike. Hosted by four-time Emmy-nominated producer Frank Pace and retired New York City firefighter, 9/11 first responder, and Vietnam vet, Billy O'Connor.
Today's guest.
My brother
Frankie, how you doing? You're rocking the USC School of Cinematic Arts. Huh?
Yeah. It's been a tough couple of weeks in LA, that's for sure. Before I get to that, our guest today is Uber agent Adam Katz, who will talk about the fires, because that's going to be a topic today. We'll talk about the Dodgers. We'll talk about, are they ruining baseball? We'll talk about the Hall of Fame. We'll talk about a lot of stuff. But why don't you tell me about these fires, because you've got so much experience, not necessarily experience. I mean, you fight fires up and down. These were fires spreading wide, but why don't you tell us about your experience with the fires?
Yeah, most of the fires we fight in New York, of course, are structural fires. And, we fight fires uniquely in New York because we put such value on property from the inside out. You know, where you have fires like this that are outdoors. I mean, we used to call that surround and drown. You know, they're going to save the foundation, basically. They're not going to go inside and push the fire out the window. But these kind of fires, these ain't fires. These are firestorms. I mean, these things, the wind is 80, 90 miles an hour. I've never experienced anything like that. You know, actually, you know, in the South Bronx and Harlem, where I worked, where it was busy structural fires, we used to make fun of guys that did brush fires. You know, like Staten Island, they had a lot of brush fires. And they said they had a big fire in Staten Island. They used to put them out with brooms. You know, they sweep dirt onto the fires, you know. So we say, what do you have, a three-broomer? You know, fucking joke, you know, like no third alarm. But when I first came out here to California, I guess about 5 or 6 years ago, there was a real bad one. And I was driving down the 5, and I'm driving 30, 40 miles. And both sides of the highway is completely burnt out. And I'm shaking my head like, you know, we've never seen anything like that. Our biggest concern with structural fires is row frame fires. And that's like a series of buildings. You'll see them on a lot of streets in Brooklyn and Queens, a series of private houses. But they have what we call a common cockloft. And a cockloft is the space between the roof and your attic. You know, there's a lot of oxygen in there. Well, years ago, they built these row frames with a common cockloft. So if the fire got in the cockloft, it would go right down the block. And we had to cut a trench and try to make a stand so we wouldn't lose the whole block. But these guys, God bless them, man, they're talking about losing cities, you know, towns. I mean, this thing, 100, I don't know how you fight a fire at 100 mile an hour. And you were, obviously, you had to evacuate. Right. So,
I couldn't believe it. I mean, you had to be here to experience. First of all, it's dark. It's like 80 mile an hour winds. The soot is so thick you can't breathe. There's electrical fires in the wires overhead. We thought, you know, we had to get out of here. We bolted to Palm Springs.
It's a tough life.
But there's a little while. You know, our house was in jeopardy, and my daughter's house, she had a mandatory evacuation there because it's pretty scary. You know, and her house had one road access, so they had, lucky they didn't have a tree block them, because trees were falling left and right. We come up La Loma here, when you make the left to come up to La Loma, a tree blocked the road. So
80 mile an hour winds, I mean, that's no joke. That's hurricane winds. And if there's a fire going, it's like a billow. I mean, that's just going to keep the flames going. And we call brands, the sparks that fly from the
big embers.
Yeah, they're brands.
Big embers.
They can start a fire any place.
They could be as big as your fist, I would think.
Without a doubt.
Like meteorites.
Without a doubt. So, I mean, my hats go off to these guys. I mean, it's no joke out here fighting those kind of fires. Well, I remember when I was in Arizona, and the 6 or 7 guys had died up in the Mountain Heroes. The guys that went out and got killed in the forest fire. So it makes you realize that, from what I understand, they had cuts in the fire department too. They don't have 4 guys on a truck anymore. They have 3. And I guess that could make a difference, a huge difference. It's manpower.
You guess?
Yeah, I mean, that's, it's manpower. And it made a difference in the Bronx when they tried to cut our numbers. And the odd thing is, because of the politicians, because of money allocations, we were doing the work. We were doing 16,000 runs a year, which was like the busiest house in the city. And they were looking to cut one of our men, but not in Manhattan, where they weren't doing any work. But the money's in Manhattan, and we were in the South Bronx, so they have no political clout. They can't bitch about it, So they were looking to cut us. But from what I understand, they cut guys here, and sure, it made a difference,
What makes a man run into fire?
It's the job, man. Some guys actually get high on it, though. I swear to God. I mean, it was my job. We got fired. We got a couple of jobs at night. It was fun. It was actually fun, especially if it's an outdoor fire. If you've got a bucket up, and we had a lot of vacants in them days because that's when the Bronx was burning in the 70s. Mm-hmm. So, and the vacants, you put a bucket up, and it might be they wait before they call us. Like it might be 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. They'll wait till it's coming out 20 windows before they call us because it's a vacant. And
they want to burn.
The natives kind of like the action, they want to see us work. So we had one arsonist, and we knew there was a couple of arsonists, what the hell was that guy? Gasoline Gonzalez was one guy.
That's so crazy.
And he knew us by name. We'd pull up, hey, Billy, how you doing? I was like, so Wayne the Flame was another guy. Wayne the Flame, he was another guy that used to set fires all over the South Bronx. But we'd put up a bucket, and you hit the bucket 12, 13 windows. The only thing we had to worry about was homeless. Somebody might be in there. Then we have to go make a search before we could open up, below the fire and make a search. But it's kind of fun. But I see guys that I was working with in the South Bronx, and they're there because they want to be where the fire is. And we get to an apartment, we force the door, and the guy on the nozzle, like I'd be behind him or something, I'd be to back up that day. And first time I got down to the South Bronx, it was so different. When I was in the North Bronx, we'd fight a fire, we'd force the door, and the guy on the nozzle say, okay, you ready? All right. And the lieutenant say, yeah. And then we'd walk in a little bit, and he'd spray the ceiling like this and walk a little bit more and spray the ceiling, a little bit at a time, crawling in. When I got to the South Bronx, I said, oh, Connie, you got the backup today. I'll have the backup on the nozzle. First job I caught, the guy who was at the nozzle was this guy, Mike Steele. He was an ex-Marine. He was nuts. But he's got the nozzle, and he goes, you ready? I said, yeah, I'm ready. Ah! Just charging through three rooms of fire, just sprinkling water everywhere in a circle. I'm like, what the hell? I'm almost pulling them back. I'm like, what? These guys. And they light up. I mean, you see guys actually light up, elated with the fact that they're putting out, but they put out fire fast. I mean,
well, what do you think about the reservoirs not being filled?
I don't understand this whole water system. I don't understand the water thing. When it rains, I mean,
well, it hasn't rained here in 6 months.
That's true. But when it rains, why can't they have more reservoirs? Why can't they catch the water? What's the deal? They let it run into the ocean? What does that mean?
I don't understand that either.
I don't understand the whole concept.
Have you guys been to the reservoirs?
I've been
out here. No.
Yeah, I mean they're massive, and so the idea that we can't hold the water is, unless there's some kind of structural problem, is absolute. It's bogus nonsense. So
yeah, well, 98% of it runs off into the ocean.
Yeah.
But why?
I don't know.
But my wife is obviously from California, and if I put on the water because I'm ready to brush my teeth, she goes, be careful with the water, don't waste the water. And I get that, so I'm conservative with the water out here. But in New York, we got so many reservoirs. I mean, water's never a problem, and the water's actually delicious.
Because it rains.
And a lot of lakes.
And a lot of lakes and a lot of reservoirs.
Yeah. But, so we need snow, right? Snow is the only thing.
Snow melts less rapidly than rain runs off. Rain runs off, and our systems can't handle it. I don't know why our systems can't handle it. I don't know why we have those scoopers, super scoopers. They have 9 planes that scoop the air retardant. And I'm going to ask you about the fire retardant in a moment. But why we have to go to Canada to borrow 2 planes? Why we don't have 50 of?
Yeah,
why we don't
exactly.
have 50 planes? The ocean's right there. You go into the ocean. You sacrifice a few plants because you drop salt water on it, and you put the fires out.
But what do you think is worse for a plant, salt water or be scorched? I mean,
I agree.
I get it. You don't want to hurt the foliage, but I think you're going to hurt the foliage. But why don't they take old C-130s, cargo planes that they don't use anymore from the Air Force, and convert them into some kind of...
because that makes too much sense. But fortunately, we got a president now who's going to save us.
Well, I don't know how much saving he's going to do. He's making political demands before he says he's going to rescue California. But I tell you what, they're talking now about 130 billion. Is that what they're saying the damage is? 250 billion.
Mm-hmm. I don't know where they're going to.
Easy.
I think it's going to take 2 years to clear out all the crap.
It doesn't have to.
Who's going to clear it?
You know,
First of all, if you deport all the Mexicans, who's going to clear it?
God. That's a good point. Listen, I'll say something. Being a real estate developer and his take yesterday, Trump's take, or I think it was yesterday or the day before, on letting people do their own cleanup without all these sort of like environmental concerns, I think that's the only way to do it.
I agree.
I agree with that. Yeah, I have no problem with that.
So
I'm not sure.
And it's not going to take 2 years if that happens,
Yes, but you got to regulate where they're going to dump the stuff.
Okay.
You have to establish landfills someplace that are so far out of the mainstream that the toxins and everything will never come up through the ground.
I think that this is like one of those issues where there's so much bureaucracy and so much red tape that if we sat down as a state and looked at the environmental concerns and looked at what actually the rubble is, I'm sure there's pretty clear ways we can take the rubble and turn it into something, manageable or usable. But unfortunately, we're going to have people in government that,
have their own vested interests at heart.
Yeah, and then they argue, and it's ridiculous.
It's always the vested interests. I mean, all these politicians are, they always, what's in it for me? What's in it for my people? What's in it? But yeah, you could take garbage dump with this and Orchard Beach. Orchard Beach was a garbage dump. Mm-hmm. They turned it into Orchard Beach, which is still a garbage dump. We used to call it Leech Beach.
Let me ask you, those planes were dumping fire retardant. What is in the fire retardant?
I'm not sure what they use from the planes. I mean, I could speak out my ass and make some kind of guess, but I don't really know. I can tell you that the Nomex, the fire retardant that we use in our coats, in our turnout coats, it doesn't really protect you from fire like a suit of armor. It gives you about 5 minutes more time before you start cooking.
Right.
But when it gets that hot, to bail out. But with what they're dropping on this stuff, I don't know. But the reason water is such a good extinguishing agent, it's not just the fact that the reason water puts out fire is because it eliminates all the oxygen, number one, right? And then, of course, it makes the whatever the material is wet, so it stops it. So it's the perfect fire agent. The water retardant thing, I guess it's probably
fire retardant, yeah.
Well,
probably spiked up. I don't know.
So far, the first ingredients are obviously water, salt, and other additives. I'll figure out what the other. So iron oxide. So
what makes it orange?
When water hits a fire, the steam, of course, is going to create steam.
Iron oxide.
Steam pushes away oxygen, and fire needs oxygen. So it's a three-way extinguisher. It puts it the perfect extinguisher because it does it in 3 different ways. It makes the fire cold. It makes it wet. Pushes away the oxygen. So I don't know what's in this fire retardant. Was it successful?
Yeah. Look at this helmet. This helmet has been melted so many times.
Those, we call them alligator stains on the back there. And it's sort of like a
these?
Yeah, the little things where the fire is. Yeah.
So
a couple of alligator stains here.
So it says that
over here, like the back, like this.
Yeah.
But this was my second helmet. But the crustier your helmet is, the more reluctant you are to give it up.
Right.
It's like in the Air Force they used to call it the 50 mission crush. When a guy had flew 50 missions, he'd bend his
Right.
flight cap. Well, if you're a lieutenant or you're a new boss, and you're bouncing around, what happens is when you make lieutenant, they send you around to all different houses until for about a year, until you pick a house, until they send you to a house they need you. And you don't want to walk into a firehouse as a new lieutenant
With a new hat.
with a new helmet. You know what I mean? Because you look like a mook. You know, the guys are going to say,
Hey. you should only look like a mook.
well, not that particular mook. They're going to say, who's this mook? And yeah, because you don't want to look like you have. And the first thing guys will ask you is, say, well, where were you a fireman? Lieutenant, where'd you work, you know? And if we were down in the South Bronx and a guy would come in and say, I was in Staten Island, go, watch this guy. Watch this guy. Because, your ass is on the line here, And if you worked in Harlem in the South Bronx, well, they know you saw action, And, of course, your hat would be a sort of a chesty move. You could strut a bit, That if I worked at 17 Truck was one of the better companies in New York. And there's a lot of great companies. I mean, not just that company, but I had my best years when I was a fireman at 17. I really, and I knew that once I worked there for 15 years that I could go anywhere in the city,
Right.
and feel quite comfortable.
Right.
Just like in your racket. You know what I mean? If you're in a racket long enough, you're not going to get intimidated producing anything.
No.
I mean, you could do Lawrence of Arabia if you had to.
Well, my friend Howie Morris was a terrific director, and I asked him once. I saw a movie, a war movie. I don't remember what it was, and I said, "Geez, I don't know how the hell you would shoot something like that." And he said, "One shot at a time," and that put everything in perspective. Put everything in perspective. Before we move on to Adam Katz, and then Joe West is going to join us later in the show. I want to ask you about Trump and Musk. So not.
I'm actually so disgusted with the election and everything else that I try not to look at the news too much, but I got to read the headlines because I've always been a news junkie. And I saw the Heil Hitler thing, you Heil Hitler or whatever. And I don't like comparing Trump to Hitler because Hitler was a war hero in World War I. But come on, man. I mean, that was an out and out fuck you to America and turn around and fuck you again to America.
Do you think so, Derek?
I hate to speculate, but it just looks. I've never done that in my life. No. It looks very strange.
But you could see all freeze frames of a lot of people.
True.
But they're kind of taken out of context.
Well,
they got Taylor Swift going on. Come on.
Yeah. Well,
it's taken out of context. Like I'm standing up in front of you and I go, hey, like this. That was his direct fucking Heil and a Heil. And I remember him saying about the New World Order. These motherfuckers, and get my English straight, these motherfuckers think what every fucking king and every nobleman since the dawn of time has thought that the rabble is not smart enough to govern themselves.
Yeah.
And this fucking time, they might be fucking right.
Well, I don't know whether I'm softening in my stance on Trump or hardening my stance on how corrupt Joe Biden was.
Yeah. But
I despise all the things that Trump as a man stands for.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sort of agreeing to a lot of the policies that he's having.
Yeah.
And that's quite a statement for me to make because I hated him and I still hate him. But I don't like Pete Hegseth being Secretary of Defense.
Mm-hmm.
But I like he's going to ban the penny. What do you think of that?
Fucking Trump. He's going to ban the penny. He's probably going to ban him and store him in his fucking basement. Just another way to steal more money from the people. I mean, come on, this fucking.
But shoring up the border, I'm in favor of that. A strong military, I'm in favor of that.
We've always had a strong military.
Yeah, I know. But
there's them screaming about how the military's
okay.
Sir, we have no bullets. Well, that'll never happen when I'm president. I mean, give me a fucking break. Can you imagine a general walking up, Sir, we have no bullets? Get the fuck out.
Yeah,
everybody in China is talking about my big brain. Go fuck yourself. He's a fucking moron. What the fuck?
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I would agree with all of that. But looking past his moronic nature and the fact that he's never made a mistake and he's always been right, some of the policies are good policies.
Look, I got no problem with shoring up the border. You know, I sort of have a problem of if he's really going to go through with deporting every immigrant that we have, or denying anybody born here as a citizen.
Well,
I
disagree with that.
I think that's carrying it a bit extreme. I don't know how the fuck he's going to deport all these people. I don't know how that's going to happen. But his whole idea.
That's all rhetoric, guys.
Yeah, that's rhetoric.
Yeah, well,
because he says he's not going to deport all the immigrants. First, he's going to deport the 2 million people that are in the country illegally that have committed crimes. You know.
Yeah, okay. I got no problem with deporting criminals, okay?
But
he got elected to lower the price of the cost of eggs. That's why he got elected. So he wants to invade Greenland. Tell me how that's going to happen. How's that going to change the cost
I
of
read
eggs?
that we officially proclaimed the Gulf of Mexico as now the Gulf of America.
Have you ever been to Greenland? Has anybody here been to Greenland? I've been to Greenland.
Yeah. It's Iceland.
It's Iceland, not Greenland, right? Yeah. But when I flew into Thule Air Force Base in Greenland, I was there for 1 day. And the big joke there is, oh, don't worry, kid, you're going to like it. There's a girl behind every tree. But there's no trees. It's like they have a golf course. It's hilarious, the golf course. The greens are about the size of a pool table. Because they can't grow any grass, so they got these manufactured greens, you know, for the golf course. But it's freezing cold. I mean, it's unbearable. I mean, it's
well. Let's get off this.
Let's get off.
Let's get off this, and
I get my blood pressure down again.
And let's go to Adam Katz.
Yeah, let's talk about baseball.
Baseball. Good to see you, my friend.
Nice to see you both. How you doing?
Hey, good, Adam. My name is Billy O'Connor, Frank's partner. Nice to meet you.
And that's Derek Harris.
I did not get your first name. Did you say Billy?
Billy, yeah, Billy.
Hi, Billy. Nice to meet you.
My pleasure, brother. Entirely.
So, Billy was a New York City fireman for 20 years. So we were discussing fires, and I know you're adjacent to the Palisades fire. Did you have to evacuate, or how close did it come to you?
Well, I was 4 or 5 miles away, and you could see it, but all I got stuck with was the profound sadness for my community and some bad air.
Yeah.
Yeah. How many?
So thankfully, we all know scores of people that got displaced or lost stuff, but I was spared.
Yeah, I know about 10 to 12 people that lost everything.
Yeah.
So, did you just adjust the phone?
I did. I'm trying to figure out how to hold this cell phone while I do this.
Yeah, hold it right there. That's good.
Okay, good.
So
again, you can't make a meatball bounce.
This could be a big breakthrough. You might start your modeling career here. This could launch it.
So
QQ.
Yeah. So did you have a lot of friends lose their homes?
Well, I know about a dozen people that got displaced. One or two that lost homes, but not a ton.
Yeah, I probably know about 10 people.
Wow.
Between the Palisades and Altadena that lost their homes. It's a tragedy.
I'm mostly struck by the magnitude of the loss for the community. I don't know how, I know they'll figure out a way, but it's hard to imagine how they rebuild. It's just hard to fathom.
Yeah, well, you found a good place to escape to, I see.
This is my favorite 10 Notre Dame Law School pals. It's possible they're going to storm this room to listen and torture me during this podcast.
That'd be great.
Don't say that loudly, please, because gosh.
You went to law school in Notre Dame, right? That's where you went to law school.
I did, and they've been needling me for 41 years.
You weren't there when Digger Phelps was coaching basketball, were you?
He was there.
Oh, he was. Digger was there, yeah.
Yeah, we had Jerry Faust and Digger.
Jerry Faust coaching the football team, huh?
Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah, well, I'm just curious because me and Frank have a good friend that was the assistant coach on the basketball team at that time with Digger.
What was his name?
Matty Kilcullen.
That's a familiar, but I can't pull it.
Yeah, well, I think he went on. He took Western Kentucky, I think, to the Final Four. That was his claim to fame later on. But he was assistant coach with Digger. Real great guy. Grew up
Wait, Western Kentucky in the late 60s?
No.
No, was it late 60s?
No, because the Western Kentucky beat us being Jacksonville the year after Jacksonville went to the finals. But Matty was at
Jim McDaniel. There's a name named Jim McDaniel. Does that ring a bell for Western Kentucky?
Sure. Jim McDaniel and Clarence Glover, because
That's right.
Clarence Glover beat our Ernie Fleming on a walking or something, a buzzer beater in the year Artis was a senior year. The year we should have gone back to the NCAA, but Daniel and Glover beat us in the first round. Well, then it was the round of 16. But
And I'm old enough to remember Rex Morgan and Pembroke Burrows.
yes, you are.
Pembroke Burrows. Huh?
Yes, you are.
You played a lot of hoop when you were a kid, right, Adam? That was your thing, right? Hoop?
I loved basketball so much and went to Dickinson and tried to play and played for about 30 seconds and made it and got cut my junior year.
Well, that ain't bad. I mean, it's still playing college ball. You got that far anyway.
Well, I wouldn't say I played.
Do you remember how we met?
We met at a Hall of Fame ceremony where Tim Raines got inducted, I believe. Isn't that right?
Right. We
Same bed and breakfast?
Same bed and breakfast. We hit it off, and that night we went out and had a couple of drinks with your mentor, Tom Rich, at the Otesaga bar, I think.
Tom Rich, one of a kind, one of one, that Tom Rich.
So you did meet Tom Rich?
Yes.
So he when I read, super flamboyant character, like
well, why don't you
demonstrative. Tell us something about Tom.
Tell us about your relationship with Tom, how it developed, and.
Well, I met Tom when I was 12. My dad was a lawyer in small town Pennsylvania, in Amish country in Lebanon, Pennsylvania. And he buddied up with Tom Rich and ended up being his lawyer for non-baseball things. So, because Tom was bargain hunting, and Philadelphia and Pittsburgh lawyers were too expensive, and Lebanon and Pennsylvania lawyers were more cost-effective. So I knew Tom at an early age. He'd come and watch me play basketball, and he introduced me to Doc Ellis. You guys remember Doc?
Oh
yeah. Billy has some questions about Doc further along in this interview.
So Doc and I became like super close, like familial close.
Wow.
And he would stay in touch with me, and I'd go see him at ballparks when I was 14, 15, 16. So I knew that the industry existed, and I'm like, well, if I'm not going to play basketball or tennis, I want to do this. So I knew at a very early age from Tom and Doc that I wanted to try and get in this industry.
So Doc Ellis had that much of an influence on you that's when you decided to move your career in that direction because of Doc.
Yeah, 100%. Because Doc had the most charming personal power of any human I've ever met in my life. And I mean that, no hyperbole. He was an extraordinary guy.
Is it true?
Hyperbole from an agent?
I'm the only one that's not given to hyperbole.
Is it true? Is it true about the LSD no-hitter? Was he on LSD? Did he ever talk about it with you?
Sure. I mean, there's a great little videos on it. I'm sure that some of it's embellished, and I don't know what dosing he took, and I don't know how high he was. I mean, because Doc could be capable of embellishing a story, but it is true. Yes, sir.
You know, one of the reasons I asked, because for me, when I first read that, maybe 20 years ago, whenever I first read it, it was totally believable to me, and I'll tell you why. I have taken LSD on occasion, maybe 8, 9 times. But one night, somebody kept spiking my drink 8 or 9 times.
Yeah.
But one night I took it and I was playing darts in a pub. And I swear I had the darts in my hand. I was looking at the bullseye, and the bullseye became a vortex. It looked like I was throwing a dart into a manhole cover. Like, it was just like I was looking at it, I was like, whoa, and I was like, wow, this is easy. I was hitting bullseyes left and right. So for me, somebody on LSD could.
That remarkable insight.
I'm just telling you my experience.
So after Notre Dame, how did you and Tom get hooked up? It was just a natural thing for you?
No, it wasn't. So I applied to regular law firms, and at Notre Dame, these kids that I'm with right now, they were all, I knew that I didn't want to compete with them because they were better than me, smarter than me, just better at every level. I'm like, holy shit, I can't do this. And then I said, maybe I should try and get into the sports business. And I was a basketball guy, so I called Larry Fleischer. And
wait.
I played high school basketball against Sam Bowie, who I was not particularly friendly with. We just competed. And I said, Larry, I can get you Sam Bowie. Hire me. And then he said, I already have Sam Bowie and I don't have room. So I'm like, oh boy.
and Larry Fleischer was the executive director of the NBA Players Association?
That's correct, yes.
Wow.
Then I thought, what am I going to do here? Am I going to apply to law firm? Should I beg, call, plead with Tom Rich for a job? And I literally called him 200 times, wrote about 50 letters, and wore him down. And he finally said, all right. And he paid me $100 bills out of his pocket for the first year. And that's how I started. I had to make myself indispensable to him. And he didn't pay me. And thankfully, my dad helped me. And that's how I got in. Well, and then I got very close with Tim Raines. That was what did it.
Well, I want to backtrack because everybody we've talked to on this podcast, virtually, and we've talked about to almost 200 people now, they've all said, I got my break because I was lucky. And you were lucky because you wrote 200 letters and 50 email or 50 letters or something to him. And after the 10th or 12th, you didn't get discouraged. You kept writing and wore him down until he said yes. And he paid you with $100 bills out of his pockets. And that's a show of real determination. And
I was persevering. There's no doubt about it. But he spent more money on champagne than he spent on me, and so I needed to figure out a way to make myself dispensable or valuable, and it was Tim Raines was my ticket in. We got very close, and he was extremely high caliber player and high caliber human, so I couldn't have been more lucky that he was my first guy. And by the way, we got close on the basketball floor too.
Oh, you were playing ball with Tim Raines, and you were hooping with him?
That's how I did it. I wasn't going to do it with intellect. I did it, get guys on the basketball floor, have a few beers. That was it.
So you had Tim all the way through his Hall of Fame career. You still represent Tim?
He might have switched agents at the extreme very end, but we stayed very close, and I think he mentioned me when he got his award. We stayed very close.
And you ultimately became a partner with Tom and Rich, Katz, and Landis. Is that correct?
Well, first it was Rich, Katz, and Landman. And Landis came 15, 20 years later. He was an exceptional agent. And he was sort of didn't like being part of a big group. He liked small, so he ditched and then signed Mike Trout.
Yeah, a good signing.
Good catch.
I believe that's his only client, but he's an outstanding agent and a great guy.
I was reading an interview that you had given, or listened to an interview, one or the other, when I was doing the research on you. And they were talking about how Mike Trout, 50% of the public knows who Mike Trout is, yet 95% know who LeBron is, and 90% know who Tom Brady is. And the disparity between baseball stars and football and stars, that the general public is not obsessed with baseball like they were when I was a kid in the 50s. You know, baseball was the thing. It was the sport. Is that a fair assessment that baseball has died and football and basketball have outshone it?
A little bit. I think we have some work to do with younger audiences. Football and basketball maybe ran by. We might be in their rearview mirror a little bit, but I think baseball's in a very healthy place. We have a little bit of work to do with younger audience. No doubt about it.
Do you think that's because when I was a kid, the World Series, they would say in grammar school, they'd say, by the way, if anybody's interested, the Yankees are beating the Dodgers 2-zip in the second inning. It'd be like 3 o'clock, and we were getting out of school over the PA system. And, of course, baseball World Series were played in the afternoon. Nowadays, when they start at 9 o'clock at night and you have a 12-year-old kid, he's got school, you can't keep him up till midnight to watch the baseball. I mean, do you think that has a lot to do with it?
I think that's one of probably a dozen reasons. Boy, I remember racing home from school at 2:30 or 3 to watch the Cardinals and the Tigers. There was nothing like it.
Yeah.
Nothing like it. But that's one of about a dozen reasons. It's pace of the game, cadence. There's cultural stuff. There's socioeconomic stuff. Baseball is conservative and moves very, very slowly. The other sports were more nimble, agile, and versatile, in my judgment.
A lot of subtlety in baseball, too, Frank. You played baseball, right?
Yeah, I did. Adam works with the Wasserman Group, who was and is one of the largest baseball agents in America. What do you think about the Dodgers signing Blake Snell, Tanner Scott, Michael Conforto, and Roki Sasaki, who your agency represented?
Well, I'd identify that Andrew Friedman is as good of an executive as I've ever known, and he follows the rules, and he's exceptional. He's just gifted, high-caliber guy that follows the rules. So he's just doing what he can do to improve his club as best he can. There's a side of me that doesn't like super teams, because if you take philosophy of sports at Marquette Law School or Notre Dame Law School, the first thing they'll teach you is the fundamental axiom of a success of a league is you can't know the outcome. So we don't want the outcome in to be known because of gambling, and we don't want the outcome to be known because of super teams. So that's a little bit of a concern for me, but I think they'll address it. And the Dodgers are certainly not doing anything wrong. They're doing everything right, and they're going to benefit from it.
Yeah, the Dodgers aren't doing anything wrong. Some of the other teams aren't doing everything right, but the Dodgers are doing what they have to do, what the Yankees did in the 50s and 60s and 90s, and what other teams did in the 80s and 90s. They're just dominating. But they're dominating the headlines, but they're not really dominating the sport. I mean, they've won how many championships in the last few years?
Well, didn't they win the COVID year and last year?
Yeah, they won a COVID win in last year.
But Frank, fellas, this team looks like them and everybody else. They're so gifted and so talented, and it's a metric data information game. They look to be quite good.
Yeah, hopefully we've seen the last from the Dodgers of the bullpen games, because they've got so many starting pitchers now between Snell and Sasaki and Yamamoto and Otani and Glasnost and
I think my partner Joe Wolf, we have 3 of those guys.
All right.
Joe's done quite a job, hasn't he?
Joel is the best agent in the business, in my judgment. He checks every box. He's tough, he's smart, he's prepared, great natural sales skills, tough negotiator, honest, he's everything. He's the best.
Well, you're not so bad yourself. You've represented 4 to 6 MVPs or most valuable players.
I've had some really good luck with that stuff. I had really good players.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
How did you feel when they won MVPs, or when a player of yours won an MVP, or when a player of yours was voted into the Hall of Fame? What kind of personal satisfaction did you get from that?
Just the way you'd think. You felt it with your guy. You just feel pride and gratified and happy, and if you hope to be close to the guys and participate in it. Everything you think that you feel.
Yeah. On the other side of the coin, you had to go to bat in Congress, right, for Sammy Sosa with the steroids issue and everything, right?
Yes, sir, I did.
You were in his corner all the way, right? He was your client. You were there.
I was there.
Now, Sammy never admitted to doing steroids. Am I correct? McGuire did, but Sammy didn't. Isn't that right?
Sammy came out with some sort of soft mea culpa about a month ago, which I did not have any, I'm not in great touch with him anymore.
Uh-huh.
But I read, he came out with a soft mea culpa, it's public, about a month or two ago, and he got invited back to Cubs Fest, to the Fan Fest, and he went back and got a warm reception and got acknowledged for all the great things he did for the game and for Chicago, and I was very happy to see that.
And quite honestly, the steroids that everybody used in the 90s weren't against the law, were they? Or weren't against the rules of baseball?
No, and I really kept myself distant from that. I was viewed as more of a lawyer, uncle, avuncular figure, so it was not something that players discussed with me. So even though I had an inclination or an idea that stuff was being done, I stayed a million miles away from it at that time.
Probably a smart thing.
It seemed the deliberate, appropriate thing to do.
Yeah.
Don't ask questions you don't want to know the answers to. Is that pretty much it?
Pretty much. And I'm sure that Sammy wasn't the only one. If he indeed did participate and use some of that stuff, which I don't know,
right?
I know that he wasn't the only one. There was a widespread use.
Yeah, that's another thing. I think the Hall of Fame voters are being selective in who they elect and who they don't elect. I mean, how can you have a Hall of Fame, and how can you have a Hall of Fame without the all-time hits leader in it, without the all-time home runs leader in it, without the guy who hit the single-season home run leader, the first man, the only man to hit 60 home runs 3 times in a season? How can you selectively have a Hall of Fame without those guys? I mean,
it just became such a white-hot issue that voters just reacted. And I mean, this is what it is. I don't have a good answer for you on this.
But there are other guys that are reported users that are in the Hall of Fame. So that's
which I'll engage in a discussion with you. Never.
No, I want to.
You should have been a diplomat, not another agent.
I won't engage in that discussion either, either on the record or off the record.
No chance.
But it's incredible to me that a guy like Sammy. Not only Sammy, but a guy like Rafael Palmeiro, guy has got 500 home runs and over 3,000 hits. I don't even think he's mentioned in the voting. It's crazy.
Well, it is crazy. I use the gumbo method for my Hall of Fame evaluation. I dump all the ingredients into a pot and then I taste it. I don't know how Barry Bonds, who's the greatest hitter I ever saw in my whole life, I don't know how he's not in the Hall of Fame. I just don't. Whatever he did for a few years, which I don't know, I have no earthly idea. But in my Hall of Fame gumbo, Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens are most certainly Hall of Famers.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, what about Pete Rose? I mean, nobody else gambled on baseball ever? I mean, nobody? Really?
Not that I know of. I don't know a damn thing about it. Remember how I opened up about the fundamental axiom of the sport? You can't know the outcome, and gambling on the game cannot be a good thing. It's a meaty ingredient in the gumbo. How's that?
Yeah. Well, me and Frank wrote a book about football called Lamar's Gamble, and I mean, there's proof that the owners were gambling. I mean, back in the 50s, there's no way that the commissioner of football is going to fire his boss. I mean, you just can't, accuse the owner of gambling. I think Rosenblum was a noted gambler. Everybody knew Rosenblum was gambling. So, I mean,
is that right? I didn't know that.
Everybody except Adam.
Never.
See, that's how you get to that position. I got to watch my P's and Q's. There's a man who knows. So I was reading about that. You were also a folkie at heart. You were back in the day. How old are you anyway? I'm 77. Were you a folkie back in the Peter, Paul, and Mary days? And
my mom was a hippie. My mom is still around, but she's a hippie, folky, far lefty, liberal Adlai Stevenson girl, and she introduced me to Peter, Paul, and Mary, and Leonard Cohen, and Bob Dylan. So it stuck with me. I'm a folkie.
Yeah, I am too, big time. I remember watching back when I was in I was 18 and I was in Charleston, South Carolina in the Air Force my first year. And Chuck and Joni Mitchell were still together, and they were playing in little folk houses. And I go around and see all those folk. They were still together.
I know Billy loves the Bob Dylan movie. Have you seen it?
I've not seen it. I've heard it's a B plus, A minus, and the music's magnificent. That's what I've heard. It's on my list.
The kid is great. Chalamet is great in it. He really is. I'm a Dylan
fan to it,
and he's really good.
How do you feel about the sports agency business becoming an integral part of the direction of each of the sports?
Well, I sort of have watched it develop since the early 80s, I guess. Geez, it's been forever. It's a little more corrupt. It's a little bit more competitive, and it's a little less nice, but there's still room for good advocates, agents, lawyers to do great job for great players and make a difference. So I try and stay in my lane, do a great job, do it the right way, and it's still very gratifying for me.
How do you go about finding your clients? Now, I mean, in the world of college sports, for example, you got to be looking at college athletes in the freshman year or even high school to develop relationships with baseball players, because high school baseball players can sign right out of their senior year and become pro players.
We have a great young staff of agents, Dominican, Puerto Rican, Venezuelan, and American young agents, and they're constantly on the lookout for great young players. And you try and get in the room and you say, we represent this one, that one, and the other one, and we do a great job, and here's about our company, and give us a chance. And it's just natural recruiting and salesmanship. Try and sign some players. That's it.
Does now your reach, when the high school player doesn't sign with high school but signs with a college, are you representing those players in the college as well?
You can be attached to them, but they're not allowed to have agents if they're not professionals. So there can be an attachment, like, for example, for name, image, and likeness, and you can be connected with them. But you got to be mindful of how connected you are.
But so you don't negotiate NIL money for the players on their behalf?
We're not like crazy NIL, but if we would take a player notwithstanding the NIL, then we'll take the player and do the NIL.
I got a really naive question for you.
You're asking the right guy.
You're so
how do you get
self-effacing.
your first number? I mean, that you walk in and you say, is there a team of guys that say, well, this guy's getting this is the number we got to ask for? And when you walk in and hit that first number, have you ever had a guy just overturn his desk and say, you're out of your mind? That was the most weirdest reaction you ever got.
On a player agent negotiation?
Yeah. Yeah, like when you walk in to get that first number.
When you walk in with Steinbrenner and you want to make a deal with Steinbrenner, how do you know what number to go in with?
That's touch, feel, and metrics and data and information. It's not that hard. My style is always to go pretty much what I think is equitable and fair, and I call it a reasonable stretch, so I have a little bit of room. But I'm not one of those guys that asks for double what I want. It never was my particular style. So I go to what I think is equitable, fair, maybe a reasonable stretch, and sort of live there. So I've never had too much trouble with that.
Never had an extreme reaction from an owner and say, what are you, out of your mind? I could buy a country for that. What are you?
No way, because I go in rationally based. And I think I've stayed credible for a long time because of that.
Who's the toughest guy you had to negotiate with?
They're all tough. And today, the young guys, the metrics guys, the analytics guys, the young Ivy League guys, they can be really tough. But they're all tough in different ways. But I've found that most people are reasonable and practical and deal makers. It hasn't been, if you're yourself reasonable, rationally based, and not piggy, you can do A-, B+ deals consistently, and I think that's what I've done for a long, long time.
So I won't ask you about Scott Boras looking for A++ deals for all of his guys.
Well, I'd rather not.
Good.
Foot doctors don't talk about heart doctors, so I'm not going to do that.
Good analogy.
And before Marvin Milner, before the whole money thing started, the owners must have been like soaking in money. I mean, or all this money just got bigger with TV and everything else. This money ain't coming out of the air. It's huge money.
Well, it's television and franchise value, and it's grown in a healthy, consistent way since I got in the business.
Yeah.
So it's like the movie business.
Yeah, it's evolving. It's a constantly evolving business because in the 70s, CBS, Mike Burke bought the Yankees in 1971 for $12 million. So they weren't exactly rolling in money.
Yeah.
And then he sold it to Steinbrenner, and I think Steinbrenner's, bought the Yankees for less than $50 million. Is it?
$50 million. Yeah. Then he got a sweetheart deal from the city too, I think, for the lease.
Yeah.
You guys are a little bit before my time with that stuff.
Yeah. Well,
old fellas.
I promised Adam we would let him go within a half an hour or so. Derek, do you got any questions?
I have some questions. I'm not on camera though. My camera failed, but I don't
want to hear from you.
Oh, perfect. Don't listen.
Go ahead, Derek.
So how much has the NIL changed the average athlete in college life?
Out of my depth.
Okay. Next question. Okay, so then this will probably be out as well. All right, that's it then.
Billy?
No, just you grew up in Lebanon, so I was the only time I was down near that neck of the woods, Amish country. That was Gettysburg, and of course the food is unbelievable. I remember the place is good and plenty, huge buffets and all that.
Look at him smile.
You must have ate like three horses and cows down there. I mean, great food, whole healthy American food.
It's Amish community. It's cornfields, churches, and high school sports. And my mom was way ahead of her time on health issues and health food.
Oh.
So there was we were an oddity in the town. So I learned to eat healthy and properly, and people pointed at us and looked at us because I wasn't eating the Amish shit.
Oh, well, I went down there one time. They took my kids to Gettysburg and had this place good and plenty. There was like tables of pies and cakes and just overwhelming amount of food. I think I would have been 400 pounds if I grew up down there.
Well, Adam, thank you so much for, I called Adam like Thursday, and I said, Adam, I'm in a spot. I was going to book you or was going to ask you to be a guest in the coming months, but I was really in a spot because we lost one of our guys lost his home in the fire who was going to be on with today, and Adam just pinch hit, and he pinched it remarkably. So if anybody needs an agent, I can recommend Adam Katz for sure.
That's very kind, and I do have profound sadness for my community. And when I heard you lost your scheduled guest, I was an easy yes for me, Frank. You're a gentleman, and I appreciate it.
And Charlie,
appreciate you asking me.
And Charlie Steiner says hello.
Good. Say hello right back. I owe him a call.
And
I'll hit him.
And he predicts he's going to be in the booth March 27th when the Dodgers play their first home game at Dodger Stadium, and that'll be a joy for all of us.
Couldn't be more pleased to hear that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Adam.
Take care, Adam.
Well.
Thank you. Nice meeting you, man.
All right,
Thanks
guys. Be good.
out.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
bet.
Appreciate it, brother.
All right, guys. Be good.
Nice guy.
Interesting guy, boy. Nice guy. And very guarded, but very smart, reserved,
He's smart.
Yeah, he is smart. He's a smart guy.
So, yeah.
Very good guest.
Yep.
Interesting guy.
Yep. So now we'll get, let's talk. Show's a little bit early, so we'll talk a little bit more before. What do you want to talk about?
I don't know, bro. It's your world.
What do you want to talk about?
It's your world. I'm living in it. I don't know.
Let's talk about Gavin Newsom.
All right. I don't know too much about him, except that everybody thinks he failed miserably. I don't know.
No, we don't talk about that. We talk about
we're done
that.
with politics for today. I can't get my blood pressure up.
Let's just go to Joe.
Okay, let's go to Joe. And,
if we're not sure what to talk about,
Joe will fill the void.
He will fill the void for sure.
Yeah.
So, previous to you, we had Adam West, Adam West, Adam Katz, on the agent from Wasserman Group. They recently signed Sasaki to the Dodgers, and we were talking about whether or not the Dodgers are good for baseball. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think they are good for baseball. Anytime you have a team that plays good ball and goes after the people they need to win, I think that's smart. And they can't say they don't have the money to go after these people, because they all do. In fact, I think the richest franchise that Major League Baseball has is the Toronto Blue Jays.
Really?
Yeah, they own their own stadium. They own everything about that ball club. They don't have to pay rent to anybody, and they've got more money than anybody. That's why you see they're still in the running to try to get these free agents. And their tax base up there is no worse than it is in California. You come play in California, you're getting killed. I think it's 15 or 16% in state tax. The places that should be picking up these guys is places like the Astros in Texas and the Rangers, because there's no state tax there. And I don't think there's state tax up for the Mariners either. I know there's no state tax for the Washington Nationals. So these guys got no excuse.
Well, what about Tampa Bay and Miami, the two poorest teams in baseball?
Yes, but they're all getting a share of that gambling money that they cut the deal with.
See,
that's where this money's coming from. Don't think for a minute that they can afford to pay these players on just local advertisement and ticket sales, because and just to speak well of the Tampa Bay team, they've done very well. They produce better with less talent than anybody. And I think Miami's won a World Series a couple times since the Yankees have. So, and the Yankees are big spenders, but there again, it's how you spend your money, it's how you develop players. And you know who I talked to just before Christmas was Jackie Autry, Gene's widow.
Right.
Wow.
And he said that she said that she had to scream at Gene to have a minor league development program.
Oh,
and she said, we didn't really win until he died, but when we started winning was when we had a minor league development program. This is, to blame the Dodgers for going out and doing what they need to do to fill some vacancies in their lineup. You shouldn't be blaming them. You should be blaming the other teams for not doing the same thing.
And one of the things we talked about was hopefully we'll never see a bullpen game out of the Dodgers again, because their starting pitching is 10 deep.
Yeah. And you know what? These pitchers don't go a whole game anymore. If you remember the Kansas City team that won the World Series, they get to the sixth inning and they had 4 closers.
Yep. Well,
and they've been one closer in after the other, and he only pitched 1 inning.
Yeah, Blake Snell will do great with the Dodgers because he's a 5-inning pitcher. So they get somebody for the 6th, somebody for the 7th, somebody for the 8th, and somebody for the 9th, and they have to hope that they all are on.
Yeah, well, that's true any day. At any given time, a great pitcher can throw a good pitch and somebody hit it. Bob Uecker hit 3 home runs off Hall of Famers. So,
a lot of mercy on him.
I'm looking for something that Rita sent me the other day. She sent me a note on Bob Gibson. Between 1968 and 1972, Bob Gibson had 122 complete games. Since the year 2000, the Cardinals as a whole have had 117 complete games.
Yeah, well, I mean, they don't go 9 innings anymore. And you know what? Gibson was the kind of guy. There's a story about him and McCarver. McCarver went out to talk to him on the mound in the middle of an inning. He said, "You need to get back behind home plate, because the only thing you know about pitching is you can't hit it." and I mean, that's a true story. Uecker one time went out to talk to him, and he said, "What are you doing out here?" And Uecker said, "I was going to go talk to the center fielder, Kurt Flood." Just to get there.
Gibson was a golden glove boxer. I got a cough. I got something.
Drink some freaking water.
Not that. It's something going on. I might not be here in a week, and you'll be saying, "A lot of mercy on him." I could be joining Bob Uecker. quick question, Joe. You said that the money's coming from the gambling deal.
Why are you yelling?
I don't know.
Why can't you just talk now?
You got me excited, Spartacus. You got me all excited.
Okay.
You know?
Now continue with your question.
What was the deal they cut with gambling? I mean, how much of a percentage do they get from Vegas or whatever? What is the deal? Do you know?
The number I heard was 1% of everything gambled in Vegas on baseball.
Huh.
1% of everything gambled on baseball.
Yeah, and you got to figure they're gambling on the guy throwing the next pitch as a ball or a strike. It's not just gambling on the game. They're gambling on everything.
Well, the more propositions, obviously, that they give you, they're not putting propositions out there because it benefits the player. 10%, if you're paying 10% juice on anything, you're paying 10% on the more you bet, the better it is for them. Mathematics is pure science.
Yeah.
It's going to catch up to you.
And they don't lose.
And they don't lose, no.
That's right. And here's the funny thing. The last couple of years I worked, we had to okay the lineup cards 30 minutes before the game because they were sending them to Vegas because they wanted to set the line before the game.
Wow.
It's unbelievable. Wow.
That's crazy.
And if you guys will remember, when they caught Pete Rose gambling, they caught him because he didn't bet. Pete never bet against the Cincinnati Reds. But when he didn't bet, that meant everybody around thought Pete didn't think he could win, so everybody put their money down the other team. That's how he got caught.
Unbelievable. I never knew that. I never knew that. Smart
Yeah.
gamblers watching to see who Pete bet.
Yep. If he didn't,
Exactly.
If he didn't,
And they would bet 5 minutes before the game, and if Pete hadn't bet, all the money would go down on the other team. And Pete wasn't smart enough
to figure
to
that out.
understand that Uberoth was trying to give him a deal. He said, we'll treat you like Alex Karras and Paul Hornung, and you sit out a year, you go to Gamblers Anonymous, and you'll be back working within a year. And Pete said, I'll take my chances with Bart, meaning Bart Giamatti. Well, that was a mistake.
Yeah, because Bart passed away of a heart attack like 4 days later.
Yeah.
Wow.
But Bart was kind of I want to say a romanticist. And Uberoth was a realist. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And Uberoth didn't really want to suspend Pete Rose, but he had to punish him for something. You can't let him gamble on baseball. That's been a rule since the inception of time. It's actually been a rule since the White Sox scandal, or they called it the Black Sox scandal, when they actually hired a guy to be commissioner of baseball.
Yep, Judge Landis.
Judge Landis, yeah.
That's right. So, and this is the funny thing. You see these gambling sites all over the advertisement for baseball games, for football games, and all this stuff. And then they say, well, you can't gamble on your sport. Well, I understand that, because then there's the reason or a belief that you could be fixing a game. But they're throwing it in everybody's face. And not only that, now they're making a profit on it. So how do you begrudge a guy, especially these young kids that are coming up? I mean, it's crazy. And you can't promote the sport like they're doing and expect no one to pay attention to it or no one to take advantage of it.
Yep.
So,
yep.
When you see these bookies like DraftKings and everything else advertising on football games during the game, I mean, they're advertising, and the celebrities they're getting to represent them in DraftKings are big money, people. So you can just imagine the amount of money we're talking about here.
Well, sports betting industry is post a record of $11 billion in 2023.
And that's legal sports
Correct.
Correct. Under the table.
What do you think it's more? Because one article says, sorry to cut you guys off, but one article says that it may be illegal sports betting generated $1.1 billion in revenue for sports teams or sports leagues like the NLB. So in other words, that's the percentage that they made from illegal.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they're saying was illegally bet. But I'll tell you why, and as a former bookie, I'll tell you why the legal bookmaking will never replace illegal bookmaking. Is because when you bet legally, you have to put the money up. When you bet illegally and you call your bookie, I could bet $15,000 with my bookie right now on a game and not have a nickel in my pocket, because I'm not expecting to lose.
Right.
So if I lose, then I got to figure out where I'm going to come up with $15,000.
Right.
but you'll always bet over your head, whatever, when you're betting with illegally because you don't have to put the money up.
Right.
So how are they collecting that money now?
They have ways.
Well, Billy just go ask Frank for the money. See if Frank can give him the
I got a better chance of getting it from you.
So Joe, let me ask you a question. What new ski areas do you have in Orlando? Did the snow make it down as far as Orlando this week?
We didn't get quite the snow, but you know what? We went out and a couple of these little what do you call them? The geckos.
Yeah.
They were in the middle of the sidewalk, frozen to the sidewalk. Not able to move, and I guess the iguanas are falling out of trees over in Tampa and St. Pete.
Oh man!
Yeah, it must have been crazy because I saw the snow in Pensacola and Destin, and New Orleans had like 6 inches of snow.
Wow!
I called this old umpire Greg Bonet, who lives in Broussard, Louisiana. He said, Joe, they're not sliding into the ditches. They're driving into the ditches because they don't know where the road ends and begins.
Wow.
They're driving straight into the ditches.
That's crazy. That's crazy. Well, what else do you want to ask Joe? What else do you want to ask Joe?
What are you doing tomorrow night, Joe?
Rita didn't go play golf in the snow, did she?
No, she's at the gym working out right now. You know what? I got something to tell you, and it's ahead of the game. The umpires had their meeting for this coming year, and they're trying to doing away with check swings. They're telling them if the batter doesn't swing completely all the way around, it's not a swing. So I think they're going to have some real problems with that in the beginning. I don't see how this is going to work because you know as well as I do that there are many times when the batter offers in a pitch and doesn't go all the way around, and we call it a strike because he swung at it. So that's become an issue with the umpires union. And there's another thing, they're trying to put this robotic umpire in place, and they're going to try it in spring training and see how it works. But I don't have all the particulars because I'm not supposed to be telling you this, but I did it anyway.
You just told millions of people out there, Joe, they're listening. Robotic umpire, they're not going to do that behind the plate, are they?
Yeah, for balls and strikes, they're looking into doing it.
Whoa.
Yep.
Wow.
And I mean, I've always said that it's crazy because when this machine misses a pitch, and they do miss pitches, they don't say anything. They don't say ball or strike. It just goes blank. So what do you do if the bases are loaded and it's 3-2 and the runners are running and the pitch comes in and the machine doesn't track the pitch? What do you do?
Call them out or safe. Yeah, I mean, is there a situation where they will go down to the umpire behind the plate and have the umpire behind the plate make the call? I mean,
there's already enough pressure on him now, but he has to make the call. Now you're going to say the pitch was too difficult for the machine to call, and you want him to make the call?
Yeah, well,
I don't think that's fair in any aspect of the game.
Wow.
So I don't know what's going to become of it, but we'll find out when they start spring training.
Yeah.
Well, it'd be interesting to say how the hell do you disagree with a robot's call and then start arguing with him. Kick dirt on the robot.
Yeah. Well, they've done. I remember when they brought the Quest Tech machine to Gray Umpire, and they took it to the umpires union meeting in Phoenix, and they put one of our better umpires, Tim McClellan, behind the plate. And before it was over, they said he missed 20% of his pitches, and you know that's not true because he didn't miss 2 pitches in a month, much less 20% of his pitches in one setting. So I mean, that's the other thing that we have problems with is on television you see a strike zone in one network and you see another strike zone in another network, and so what's the real strike zone? I mean, well, I don't care what it is. Just tell the umpire what it is so he can call it that way.
Yes, and I understand that they are one of the problems they're having is they can't adjust the strike zone per player. So
Yeah. So how is Altuve's strike zone compared to Aaron Judge's?
Correct. A 5'6" guy compared to a 6'7" guy. It's crazy. Well, we'll let you go, but I just
Wait, I got a question for the
sure.
group. Is Ohtani overrated?
I say no.
No, he's done everything. I mean, he's not going to hit like Babe Ruth did. He's not going to hit that many home runs. I mean, he's a spectacular player. As Todd Cobb would say, he runs a lot better than Babe Ruth too.
Well,
he's the real deal. He's the real deal, and I'm not so sure after this surgery what his pitching is going to be like. And you never know after that kind of surgery. But the point is, he's a bona fide candidate for the Hall of Fame when it comes his turn.
I mean, he's won 3 most valuable players already. People forget this. People forget the 6 years he spent with the Angels, and in 1 year with the Dodgers it was like the press discovered this superstar that was 45 miles down the road. And you think you also have to remember about Ohtani is he's a world star.
Right.
He's like Pele was in soccer in the 60s and 70s. He's like Messi is today. He is a merchandising superstar.
And Billy, he didn't gamble on steroids either.
Yeah,
well, the jury's still out on that.
Yeah.
The jury's still out on that.
Did his agent get the jackpot about gambling? Wasn't that the big thing?
We just heard yesterday a tape where his agent or his interpreter was impersonating Ohtani, and he was trying to transfer $200,000 from Ohtani's account to cover his gambling debts.
That's crazy.
It is crazy.
Well, I got one more question. The steroid use is that still taking place in baseball? Do you think, and they have a better way of hiding it, or and that's in sports in general? My answer is I think so. It is, but I want to know what you think, sir.
Well, I do know that for the longest time they had no tests for the human growth hormones.
Okay.
And that was what Tiger Woods was taking when he was on his run for his best golf of his life.
Right.
And I don't know if they have a test for it or not, but it's kind of funny. The orthopedic surgeon for the Dolphins and the Marlins in Miami says human growth hormones are the greatest thing we've ever come up with because there's no side effects to them. And he says, and we're trying to ban them. So, but I don't know specifically what they're testing for anymore. I do know that they used to come in and test us on the craziest times, and it would scare the hell out of some of our guys because maybe they had a couple too many drinks the night before. But I always told people, some of our umpires umpire better when they're
a little lubricated.
A little strength in the
a little fortitude.
Oh, so they drug tested you guys. They drug.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Okay. Wow. Huh. Well, just to jump on this a little bit more, I feel like if people are taking, if there's one person taking something, more than likely, because it's sort of like a closed society, more than likely there are other people taking it. So it's just my
well, that's true. And whenever they'd come up with one test to test the ball player for the steroids, the players would go to their doctors and figure out how to mask it so that it didn't show up.
Yeah.
But Lalo Alzado killed himself taking the steroids.
Yeah.
Dave Casper, who played with him, told me one day. He says, he'd shoot himself up and there'd be a bubble on his butt.
Jeez.
He said it was ridiculous, and he said, did it give him extra strength? He said, yeah, but it killed him.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. All right.
Well, Joe, congratulations are in store for your lovely bride, Rita Hoff West, who is being inducted into the Missouri Sports Hall of Fame soon.
Congratulations.
Well, she's been in the Missouri Sports Hall of Fame. She's getting the presidential.
Oh, excuse us.
which is a big deal. I don't think there's like 8 of them in the entire history of the Missouri Hall of Fame. But she's at the end of this month, she's being inducted, and she hates it when I brag about her. But I'm so glad you did it instead of me.
Yeah.
Congratulations. That's fantastic.
That's great.
She's a great gal, and she's more than deserving of that honor. So give her our love, and you take care, and we'll talk to you next time.
Thank you so much.
All right, brother. Great to see you, Joe. Take care of yourself.
Thank you,
See you guys.
He's the best.
More wit and wisdom from Joe West.
Yeah. So she was a racquetball player. Is that right?
Yeah, but she was a basketball player. She was an all everything.
Wow. She all around sports.
I met her when she was
Abe Zacharias.
Yeah, I met her when she was a racquetball player, but she had already been a great college basketball player. A great.
Does she beat Joe at golf?
Yeah. And she plays from the same tees as he does. So
damn, just under the bus, Joe. Sorry, let me help you out, Joe.
So this is a pretty good podcast.
Yeah, it was good.
Turned out to be great.
A lot of fun.
A lot of great.
Thank you for looking in.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Derek.
Derek, thank you for doing a great job, technical wise.
Hey guys, thank you guys. Thank you for making it to 2025.
Yep, for sure.
You prick. Thanks for making it to 2025. Now take care of yourself. Don't look good.
What year did we start this? 2021?
2020.
2020?
I'm on my 3rd notebook,
Yeah.
I can tell you that.
Wow, you better save those.
I am.
Archive them because there'll be a lot of demand for those notebooks.
Write a book about the podcast.
Yeah.
Hey guys, you guys.
The pod and his cast.
I know Facebook is our spot, but YouTube's picking up.
Is it?
Is it
Oh
really?
yeah,
Good.
yeah.
You're kidding.
Wait. What about TikTok?
No,
We'll do a little
you gotta
dance.
do some
Do a
dance.
little dance, make a little love, get down tonight.
Get down to that.
All right. See you next week, folks.
We'll see you next week.